Hello, happy Friday, everyone. Welcome back to the museum's Instagram Live. Welcome to Real Drama. My name is Olivia. I'm a manager at the Museum of Broadcast Communications. I'm bringing in now our general manager, Aileen. Once Aileen's in here, we'll talk more about it. There she is. Hello.
She's facing the wrong way. There she is. Was that welcome to me?
That's welcome to everybody.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome, everybody. My gosh. Aileen,
hello. How's what?
How's it going?
It is going.
It is going.
How is it going for you, my naughty little possum?
Naughty and possumly, as usual. Today is not going to be super naughty or possumly, actually. Today is going to be a little different. We're going to talk about podcasts today, aren't we? I've got...
So, and I know we told you guys last week we were going to be talking about greatest hits of the real world today, but things are different, and things look a little different now from where we sit, and we thought it was important that we talk about that. So, Olivia, why did we change direction specifically?
I mean, obviously it's no secret that race and the rights and safety of Black Americans is at the forefront of everyone's minds right now. And so we thought that, one, people can still use some entertainment this week. Entertainment is what I call Aileen and I babbling about whatever our hearts desire. So we decided that we should still do the show, but we decided that we can use this time and platform to do a little good and to aid in a little bit of representation. So this week and next week, we're going to be talking about Black life and culture reflected in the art that we specifically focus on, which is radio and television.
Cool. I'm here for it.
Awesome. I'm so glad.
Oh, is that what we're doing? I'm out.
If you weren't, we would have an issue.
I can't hide completely. Here we go.
Okay, something called Bad Theater Fest joined, and I gotta say, I would go to a festival of bad theater.
Dude, right?
I have always said that good theater is great, bad theater is good, mediocre theater is terrible.
Bad Theater Fest, we need to know, is it bad theater that is intentionally bad, or does it end up being, or does it just work out that way? Like, are you trying to make bad theater, or is it theater that could have been good but ends up bad? Like, what, we need you to tell us, because I am also fascinated by the Bad Theater Fest.
I am intrigued. But we've got a lot of ground to cover today, so we should get started. As Bad Theater Fest is hopefully typing and letting us know what's up. I'll keep an eye on it. But today we're going to talk about podcasts, because as I started thinking about this and asking friends for suggestions and just glancing at Spotify, the world of podcasting is immense and multifaceted, and you could drown in it. It's a low-stakes theater that always usually... Oh, great.
It is so foreign to me, the whole podcasting world. I've never really been much of a listener, but I know people that do. But I think I've always been a little intimidated. I didn't know where to jump in, because there's so much, like you said. Bad Theater Fest, thank you for the explanation.
Thank you so much.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't really listen to podcasts. I listen to one podcast religiously, and it's because it is by people that I know and about things that I know very well. I'm friends with a lot of comedians, and so they are constantly recommending podcasts to me. And they're usually either their own podcast or a podcast by two white dudes who are talking about how it takes courage to do stand-up. And I gotta say, I don't have the time. I don't have the time.
Not really relatable.
For your bravery, I just... But I do have the time for podcasts by Black folks, specifically Black women, and we should all be making time. And if you are an avid podcast listener, take a look at who you're listening to and the topics that they're covering. I think that's huge. I think that just in my experience of listening to podcasts, particular podcasts by folks of privilege, straight, white, male comedians, a lot of times they try to dive into topics that should be reserved for someone else to discuss. And I think people can feel emboldened when they have a microphone and a platform. But I would just recommend, if you're listening to podcasts, take a look at who you're listening to and what they're saying, and kind of decide how you would need to diversify your playlist from there.
And if you guys have suggestions of podcasts with, Black creators, Black hosts, and like you said, specifically Black women, because women are more relatable, I think, to both of us. Tell us in the comments. Give us options, because like I said, I'm scared to just dive into podcast land. There's so much. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to pick the good from the bad. So if you guys have suggestions, we would love to hear them. Please type them out at us in the comments.
Yeah. So I think where I have started when I'm looking for podcasts is I usually, and I don't know what this genre would be called. I call it, in my own notes that I'm reading from, interviews.
Okay.
I often, when I am listening to podcasts, often pick based on who the guest is. Like I said, there's only one podcast that I've listened to religiously. No, otherwise, I will kind of jump around if I read about a good interview with a celebrity that I enjoy. So I've got two recommendations in the interview category. The first is called, it's from NPR, and it's called It's Been a Minute with Sam Sanders.
Okay.
Sam interviews folks from pop culture, from all different parts of pop culture. His most recent episode is with Hassan Minhaj, and they're talking about faith and religion, which I think sounds awesome.
Yeah.
He's spoken on that before, and it's very fascinating. He has one episode with Samantha Irby, who is a Chicago author who I very much enjoy. She's hilarious, and I believe she has a new book coming out. That's just a little plug for Samantha Irby, a person I don't know. Oops, I lost, there we go. And then he also does a weekly wrap-up of the news. So it seems, we've got a fan.
Got a fan, thanks, Tish.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you're into pop culture, you want kind of a wide array of folks and conversations, the description said that join Sam as he makes sense of the world through conversation. So that sounds fun. I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then there's also a show from Netflix called Strong Black Lead, hosted by Tracy Clayton. And every week, Tracy sits down with a Hollywood legend who has paved the way for other Black performers. Some episodes include Taye Diggs. There's one with Garrett Morris. If you've been to the museum before, you know that we had an SNL exhibit, and there were lots of great Garrett Morris clips in there. I'm really excited. I downloaded an interview she does with Kyla Pratt.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like, Kyla Pratt, what's up?
All right.
What's up, Penny Proud?
Right.
Yeah. So I think both of those sound really fun. I love and Aileen, I know that you love gossip and
I
drama.
do.
And
I do.
want to hear about how people got to where they are. And I think that a lot of podcasting is built on that. It sounds fun. Next, and also just as a disclaimer, these are genres that I made up based on my understanding of podcasts. And because the ones on Spotify were a little broad, the ones on Apple were a little narrow, I thought, I'm gonna decide the vibe and categorize them as I see fit.
I like it.
So next we have culture. And these two recommendations that really dive into Black culture, and from what I've read about them and the snippets that I've listened to, I love that they're coming from a place that is truly to celebrate Black culture and not to teach white people about Black culture. Because I think a lot of times creators of color get pigeonholed into teaching a lesson instead of just living in who they are and celebrating it. So I'm really excited about this first one. It's called The Nod. It's hosted by, I have lost their names, Brittany and Eric. And all the episodes are about 30 to 40 minutes. And the description is, The Nod tells the stories of Black life that don't get told anywhere else, from an explanation of how purple drink became associated with Black culture to the story of how an interracial drag troupe traveled the nation in the 1940s. They celebrate the genius, the innovation, and the resilience that is so particular to being Black in America and around the world. And actually, they've stopped doing this podcast. It used to be weekly, but now they have a daily show on Quibi, the new streaming platform. So they've been doing that. But I actually listened to, they put out this week a 2-minute or an 8-minute episode that I listened to earlier today. And it's just the two of them reflecting on current events. And I would definitely recommend giving that a listen. It's The Nod, and the episode is just 8 minutes long. It's called We've Seen This Before. I've already downloaded a few of their episodes. The one that I'm looking forward to, Aileen, you know I love me some Kenan Thompson.
It's true.
And they have a whole episode about why that man deserves an Emmy. He technically did win an Emmy, but he should win Best Actor in Comedy, I'm just saying. So that's great. And then there's a similar sounding podcast called The Stoop with Layla Day and Hannah Baba. And similar to The Nod, they have episodes about what it's like being Black and an introvert. They travel to Paris for one episode to talk about being a Black Parisian. They are both journalists, and so they talk about what it's like getting into the field of journalism as Black women. So that sounds fascinating. That one sounds more, what's the word?
Serious.
Yeah, or academic. Yeah, that's the
There
word.
you go, academic.
Yes.
That's a good one.
So kind of two different sides of the same coin. Both sound very interesting and great for folks looking to celebrate, and also for folks looking to learn and understand. Speaking of academics, Aileen, you've got a fan of some podcasts that you know, correct? Who gave you some recs?
Yep. So my partner is a podcast dude, not a maker but a listener, and he had a couple of suggestions, both by Austin Walker, who I think is one of the editors-in-chief at Vice now, specifically Vice Gaming. Austin hosts two different podcasts. One is called Friends at the Table. It's for all you D&D nerds out there, all you RPG folks. And it's not just a play along, but it also talks, it is an actual play podcast. They do that, but they also talk about like building smart characters and critical world building and sort of all the things that go into to running and creating an RPG game. So sort of a different take there. And then his other is Waypoint Radio. Waypoint is Vice's games division, I believe, and that's their video gaming podcast. So reviews, trends, all that kind of cool stuff. Those are the things that I do recreationally. So if I'm going to start listening to podcasts, those are probably a place that I would choose to start because they're topics that are information that are interesting to me. And again, as I'm so overwhelmed with the world of podcasts, having a familiar with the subject matter, I think will kind of help lower the bar for me a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool. I feel like, honestly, listening to people play D&D because it's like they're putting on a show for you.
Kind of, yeah.
That sounds fun. Cool. So moving on to comedy, as we all know, there's so many. There's so many. Everybody has a comedy podcast. Every comedian has a podcast or has been on a podcast. So if there's a certain comedian that you're looking for, you can probably just type them in to any podcasting platform and find something that they've done. But two specifically are Larry Wilmore, Black on the Air. Comedian Larry Wilmore, he's an Emmy winner. He talks about issues of the week, so kind of recaps the news, and then he also interviews guests who are politicians, people in entertainment, sports, etc. Kind of a classic podcasting format. And then we have Two Dope Queens, which I know I have been sleeping on. This podcast has been recommended to me thousands of times.
Me too.
Yes. And so I am making a point to start listening because I know that I will love it. I just know. I'm just so bad about sitting down and listening to a podcast. But this is hosted by Phoebe Robinson and Jessica Williams, two best buds. They have a live comedy show in Brooklyn, New York. And they invite their friends who are also comedians. They talk about anything and everything. And it's just supposed to be a hoot. And I'm very excited to start listening. Moving on to a category I call businessy stuff.
While we're still in comedy.
Oh, yeah?
Again, if I were going to start listening to podcasts, we talked about her a couple weeks ago when we did Nailed It. Nicole Byer has a couple of podcasts, and she is hysterical, and I love her.
Yes, I have one that I put in a different category, but I love to hear what it is.
So the one I was thinking is Why Won't You Date Me?
Yep.
Which is Nicole's exploration of why, as a smart, funny woman with a fat ass, her quote, not mine, why is she still single? So she has guests come on to talk about their dating lives, and then they kind of use that to break down why her dating life is not going so well. So,
yes,
love Nicole Byer, would listen to that. But you've got to categorize somewhere else.
Love Nicole Byer, and I put that into the dating/romance category.
That makes sense.
Because apparently these couples who are so in love make podcasts where they talk about their love and they give advice, which is why I'm rooting for Nicole Byer and her Single Girl podcast.
He's single.
And also, yes, Riley says Nicole Byer is my hero. She is truly, we don't deserve her. I'm still watching Nailed It. For those who have watched this show before, I love her. I have purchased clothing to mimic her.
See, it's not just me.
This is true.
And I will again plug she's got a book coming out soon.
And I can't wait. So we will definitely be listening to Why Won't You Date Me? If you're happily coupled, Aileen, there's a podcast called Love in Real Life. It's by a couple named Nathan and Elena, and they just share stories about their relationship. and give advice and some enlightening tidbits for other couples from things including health, faith, and just general life. You can listen to that one, and I'll listen to Why Won't You Date Me? How about that?
No! I don't wanna.
But we love it. We support love. Everyone
We
should
do.
listen. Yes.
But if I have to choose between the two, I think I want the funny one.
Sports. There's a whole world of sports podcasting. Sports, I mean, there's I just can't even, you can't even have one podcast just about sports generally. Every podcast is just about one specific team that plays one sport. It's insane, the whole world. But specifically, one that caught my eye is called All the Smoke. It's a basketball podcast hosted by former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. They're famous for being super intense players, and also they've mentored a lot of other NBA players. And the reason I was grabbed by this podcast is in the description it said that they will be dishing on drama on and off the court. And I was like,
we love a
yes,
dish.
boys, that's what I'm here for. Give me the drama. I want to know who's talking crap in the locker room. I want to know who hates who on which teams. That is what I'm here for.
If there's anything that's gonna,
that's what
if there's anything, yeah. But if anything is gonna make me listen to a sports podcast, it would be that phrase.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, you got me. I'm in. And then there's a WWE podcast called The New Day. And this is by 3 men who perform WWE.
I was gonna say, it's interesting that you put that in the sports category.
It was in the sports category on Spotify. It's
okay.
a sport of sorts.
It's theater.
It's theater. It's like a theater and wrestling. Anyway.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh.
But this is great for us specifically in the show, Aileen, because it's essentially a reality show from my understanding of it. They are a trio who do WWE, and the podcast kind of follows them behind the scenes. We hear what life is like for them on the road as they're traveling matches. So that sounds really cool. I don't know anything about that world. And it seems like a cool way to get into it rather than just interviews, kind of actually getting to like ride along with them on their journey. Sounds fun.
It also sounds like it has the potential for a little dish, a little shade. So
yes,
I'm here for that.
I want some dish. I want some shade. I want it all. Okay, now back to the businessy stuff. When I read the descriptions for these, I was like, I need to put on a suit just to listen to this. But I'm here for it. The first is called Innovation Crush. And this is a show that profiles specifically marketing ideas. Actually, no, I'm so sorry. That's the other one. Innovation Crush is anything from technology, business models, personal development, which is a phrase that could mean anything. But it's hosted by Chris Denson, and it's basically about cool ideas and projects that people are bringing to life. And it sounds like something that you would maybe watch on like the Discovery Channel or
Yeah.
TLC, but more of a fun and flirty, how it's made kind of thing, which sounds really cool. And then the other businessy stuff podcast is called Revision Path. And this is a showcase specifically for Black graphic designers, web designers, and just digital creatives. It's hosted by Maurice Cherry, and they interview designers about their work and who has inspired them. And in 2015, it won the Most Inspiring Design Podcast Award at the
that's cool.
Creative Marketing Awards.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And I think that's excellent. I think lifting up Black voices in a graphic design of a very white-dominated space is awesome.
Yeah.
For folks smarter and more talented than me.
Differently talented, not more talented.
Oh, that's kind of you to say.
It's honest of me to say.
Oh gosh, it's already 5:56. Okay. How am I? Okay, moving on. We've got 2 suggestions for some mental health / inspiring kind of podcasts. These feel like things that are good for when you're like driving to or from work, I guess depending on the kind of day that you've had or are about to have. But I think you just really need some feel good, like you got it kind of listening. This is what's up. So the first is the Gifted Connection podcast with Nathan McClinton. He describes himself as a millennial inspirational enthusiast who is committed to helping you shatter your untapped potential and live out your dreams.
Oh my God, I want
Nathan.
I want that.
Yes.
Yes, please.
I want to be an inspirational enthusiast. The Gifted Connection is your safe place to live, learn, grow, and become your best self. Yes. And it's all about learning what your gifts are and how to use them. And he ends it by saying, the question is, are you ready? And to that I say, yes, sir.
Oh,
I'm ready to tap into my gifts, Nathan. So I'll be giving that a listen. And then there is a podcast called Therapy for Black Girls, and it's hosted by Dr. Joy Harden Bradford, who is a licensed psychologist. And she offers practical tips and strategies to improve mental health, and pulls back the curtain on what happens in therapy sessions. So this could be great for someone who is considering going to therapy, or maybe it is great a supplement to your regular mental health practices.
Well, it sounds like maybe it would help break down some of the stigma inherent in going to therapy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So those are those 2, which that is a section of the podcast world I've never even considered touching.
I didn't know it existed.
Reading about them, I'm like, maybe. Could be fun. Could be helpful. And then as we are nearing the end, I've got some honorable mentions.
Okay.
Some podcasts that are not specifically created by or specifically created for Black folks, but that feature Black stories. So the first is from NPR, Code Switch. This is a really popular and famous one. The episodes
I've
about
listened
race
to some of that.
and how it impacts literally everything in society, politics, sports, pop culture, all of the above. There are some great episodes out now that could be very informative about what we are currently living through. And then there's a series called The Other. It's called Other, Mixed Race in America. And I think that is very cool. One, I'm excited to listen to it. There's an episode called When You Don't Look Black. And is not a ton of representation for biracial people in any media. So I think that's cool that they're doing it. It covers all kinds of races. So I'm excited to give that a listen as well.
Cool.
My honorable mentions.
So if you think in the middle of the night about a podcast that we should definitely be giving a try, drop us a note. We will check it and see as you guys go along.
Yeah. And next week we'll be back talking about kind of history of television, particularly the history of Black television shows and people who have really helped form television as a medium.
And we haven't forgotten about reality, folks. We're just trying to figure out in this time what is the right way to entertain and inform.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still out there. Don't worry. We haven't forgotten.
Oh, trust me. You can't expect us to stay away from some good trash TV.
It's true. Everybody needs trash.
Everybody needs trash. And on that, have a great weekend. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you, guys.
We'll also, we'll be making a post, or I can add it in the description of this,